Cam Coleman is going to hit the transfer portal, while the loss for Auburn could be a reward for another SEC team. And Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code Locked On College, get $20 off your first purchase. All right, we got to get to the big news that came out on Monday afternoon, and that was Auburn wide receiver Cam Coleman hitting the transfer portal, or deciding to enter the transfer portal. You get it. The transfer portal will open this coming Friday. And of course, Coleman came to Auburn as a five-star prospect of the class of 2024. And according to On3 and several other outlets, he will be playing next season elsewhere. He is arguably the top overall player to announce his plans to enter the transfer portal, an elite wide receiver. He has accounted for over 1,300 yards in 2 seasons at Auburn. And that's despite all the poor, subpar quarterback play that Auburn has had these last 2 seasons. According to Pro Football Focus, Coleman caught 57 of his 88 targets this season. His average depth of target was over 13 yards. That was third among SEC receivers with at least 75 targets. It's a big blow for Auburn. Obviously, they were looking for Alex Golesh to take this offense, get it going, that Hugh Freeze never really could get going. And it does look like, with all these different weapons that they're losing in the transfer portal. We've talked about it. A lot of the names that have been entering the portal or announcing they're going to enter the portal there for Auburn. Obviously, the trio of the big receivers of Perry Thompson, Horatio Fields, and Malcolm Simmons. You now add Cam Coleman to that list. It gets airy because now you start to look at Eric Singleton and go, okay, we got you from Georgia Tech last offseason. We'll pay you to stay, but you were hoping for a dynamic 1-2 punch of Coleman with Singleton. And now if Cam Coleman's going, where does this leave Auburn? So it's, like I said, it is a big loss for Auburn and for Alex Golesh and his staff. Man, it's just, again, starting off on the wrong foot before you even coach your first game there on the plains of Auburn. And, now the possibility of where he's going to end up, it gets frustrating because you start to wonder, could he end up at another SEC school? And so that's where one of the big schools, obviously a lot of people making connections with, is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Cam Coleman has a clear attraction to the state of Alabama, given he is from the state. Alabama is a school that would make a lot of sense for him. And, they could use another big pass-catching weapon with, Ryan Williams kind of underachieving this year in his sophomore year. Jerry Bernard stepped up and was a big weapon for them this year. But Cam Coleman instantly becomes wide receiver 1. And then you wonder if Ryan Williams can get back on track to being more what he was a freshman going into his junior year. That's quite a tandem. And whoever's throwing the ball, whether it's Keelan Russell or does Ty Simpson come back for another year, whoever, that is a big-time pass catcher. And the Iron Bowl rivalry to have a Cam Coleman who was such a big-time playmaker and wide receiver for Auburn in the fold these past 2 seasons to now go over to Tuscaloosa. So Alabama is one of those teams. Ohio State is another one, which absolutely gets ridiculous when you think about Jeremiah Smith, how good he's been his first 2 years at Ohio State. And, he's still got to play a true junior season. And you talk about the fact you could add him with a Cam Coleman. My goodness, the rich would get richer there for Julian Sayin and Ohio State. So Ohio State's another school that was mentioned in the fold. How about the Georgia Bulldogs? We saw what they did this year, bringing over, the Zachariah and then what Noah Thomas came over from A&M. But Gunnar Stockton, moves the ball around pretty well. I just, you're talking about a big-time premier wide receiver to go over to Georgia. I think that would be ridiculous. But Zachariah Branch was a junior, so he could potentially have another year. Noah Thomas was a senior, so he'll be gone. Dylan Bell was a senior. He'll be gone. London Humphreys is a junior. He could be back. And then you have all those dynamic freshmen that they brought in, C.J. Wiley and Taylor, and the list goes on and on. But I mean, Cam Coleman, move him to the top of Georgia's depth chart if he were to go to Athens. How about LSU? We're waiting to find out who their quarterback's going to be. But Lane Kiffin, what does he do? He's going to throw the ball a ton, and he's had some wide receivers get drafted these last couple of years, and so LSU would be interesting. They put Oklahoma as a team to watch. John Mateer, he needs a big time weapon. Oklahoma seems like they are willing to pay on the NIL front, so that would be really fascinating. And then the last one, Texas A&M. I mean, talk about Marcel Reed taking that big step this year and having Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. Now, Mario Craver's already announced he's coming back. Casey Concepcion declared for the draft. So there's a need there on that other side of a 1-2 punch of that wide receiver combo that they had in the pass game for the Aggies. And, man, that would be an incredible weapon to add for Texas A&M. So, look, don't get it twisted. I mean, Cam Coleman would be a huge addition for wherever he goes, but it just for Auburn, it would really stink to have him as a guy that would be playing opposite you now, a guy that you now have to defend and worry about in that aspect. But here was what Yahoo wrote. They said Coleman has a clear attraction to Alabama, given that he's from the state. On the other hand, Ohio State has established itself as one of the top destinations for wide receivers in recent years. And with the recent departure of offensive coordinator Brian Hartline to replace Golesh at South Florida, it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. They say Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma are also likely contenders looking for a top wide receiver. And at 6'3", Coleman stands out as arguably the best option available. Coleman was previously committed to Texas A&M, but his commitment wavered after the Aggies fired Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino left for Arkansas. Coleman's impending portal entry sends immediate shockwaves through both Auburn and the national recruiting landscape. He's listed as the top transfer portal player, according to On3. And like we said, for Auburn, it means losing an elite, proven receiver. And what stinks now is you're hoping to get a little bit of momentum of, okay, maybe we get Byron Brown, USF quarterback. He follows Alex Golesh over to Auburn. Okay, great. The problem becomes now, like, okay, who's he going to throw it to? If it's just Eric Singleton and the whole rest of that wide receiver room is empty. This piece says nationally, Coleman instantly becomes one of the top premier offensive talents. His size, production, and pedigree makes him a plug-and-play number one option for any contender looking to upgrade their passing attack. And, of course, that includes programs like Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and LSU. So we'll see what the decision will be. And, again, the aftermath for Auburn, it sucks. I mean, it is a day of, man, huge blow, gut punch on – where this program is going. But you also got to know the day you decide to fire Hugh Freeze, was that the best decision for this program moving forward? If the answer is yes, you have to live with whatever the repercussions are on whoever moves on. I said this to LSU people. I said this to Florida people. It sucks. It stings. It's guys that you have followed for the last couple of years on the recruiting trail. It was a huge win when your school landed them. You celebrated it. It was so awesome watching them play in your school's uniform for a year or 2 years, whatever it is. But this is the new reality. Once you fire your coach, that guy has no loyalty to that school anymore, and he's going to go look for the top dollar, especially when it's an elite premier athlete or a talent like a Cam Coleman. He's going to go look for that top dollar elsewhere. And so, some aspects you can't blame him, but if you're an Auburn fan, it sucks. There's just no other way to say it. So we'll certainly keep you up to date and track what the latest is on Cam Coleman. And we'll hear from our guy, Zac Blackerby, later in the show, giving his thoughts from an Auburn perspective on where they go from here and what this means with Cam Coleman hitting the transfer portal, leaving Auburn. All right, still more to come. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Come up next, we'll get into the injury report ahead of the big SEC teams in these college football playoff games coming up next. Hey guys, but first, there is nothing like the college football season, from the tailgates to packed stadiums, being there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But if you want to get tickets to the games, that used to be the frustrating part, with long queues and lines and prices jumping at checkout. That's why our friends at Game Time, they're giving the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. You open the Game Time app, find an upcoming college football game, potentially a playoff game, and you're going to be surprised how fast you find it is to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. You'll go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes, and those zone deals, they really stand out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. Seeing college football tickets start as low as $25 makes it easy to plan a game day trip. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. It is game time. All right, guys, jumping back into it. Thank you for making a Locked On SEC your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network out there. Did want to remind you guys about you already live your team every day. Now you can take it up a level and go ad-free. You can join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On SEC with no interruptions, members-only discount access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 for a year. Go to lockedonsec.supercast.com. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, let's get into some of the news happening around some of these upcoming playoff games. Let's start with the Sugar Bowl. Georgia and Ole Miss gearing up for their college football playoff rematch on New Year's Day in the Sugar Bowl, and a massive injury update on starting center Drew Bobo for Georgia. He is the linchpin of their offense. The senior center suffered that foot injury in their regular season finale against Georgia Tech that kept them out of the SEC championship. And it looks like the Dogs will have to go without Bobo against the Rebels in the Sugar Bowl. As the second team All-SEC selection was officially listed as out on their Monday night injury report. Bobo will most likely be replaced by redshirt freshman Malachi Tolliver, who filled in for Bobo against Alabama in the SEC title game. And look, did pretty good in his first career start. Freshman pass rusher Gabe Harris and junior defensive back Jonel Aguero were also officially listed as out for Georgia. Let's take a look at the injury report here. And Ole Miss, they'll be missing cornerback Cedric Beavers and offensive lineman John Wayne Oliver. Thursday Sugar Bowl rematch, of course, going to be a win-or-go-home game with a rematch of the two teams we saw go at it earlier this season. But, yeah, not great to see Drew Bobo out for Georgia as we get closer. Now, Colby Young is one to watch. Their wide receiver that's missed so much of the season. He was at practice the other day, and some people were noting, oh, okay, Colby Young. Could he be back here for Georgia in these playoff games? So that'll be something to keep an eye on. And then yesterday, Ole Miss also announcing that Kejuan Lacey and tight end Daquan Wright officially probable. So running back Kejuan Lacey, we know he got banged up late in that playoff game against Tulane. Sounds like he is, or at least appears he is going to be a go. It's listed as probable on the injury report for Ole Miss. How about for Alabama? Not many surprises there. Jamarian Latham, Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., and Jeremiah Beeman are all out for the Crimson Tide against Indiana in their playoff game. And from what there's 5 names on the Indiana injury report. Their kicker, Brendan Frank, is listed as probable, but the other names, talking to some Indiana people, that seems to be the same kind of like no surprises there. Same guys that were expected to be listed as out are out. So again, Indiana and Alabama, they'll kick off 3 p.m. Central Thursday in Pasadena, California. That'll be on ESPN. And then in the night game, of course, will be Georgia and Ole Miss from New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl. Speaking of the Sugar Bowl, Sugar Bowl is drawing the highest ticket prices of the first 8 college football playoff games. The second round is set to kick off as you ring in the new year with 4 quarterfinal matchups between 8 of the nation's top programs. Ole Miss and Georgia in the high-stakes Sugar Bowl rematch in the Big Easy. Rebels looking to avenge the loss from earlier this year, given the stakes of the rematch. And obviously, think of the fan bases. I mean, Ole Miss is a team that they've never been here before into the playoffs. So making that not very long drive from Oxford, Mississippi down to New Orleans, where there was a ton of Ole Miss fans anyway, on that trek down from Mississippi into Louisiana, there are going to be a ton of Ole Miss fans there, and a ton of Georgia fans as well. Georgia always travels very well. But according to Fox College Football's Twitter account, the New Year's Day rematch between Georgia and Ole Miss is the most expensive ticket of the college football playoff thus far. Prices ranging from $235 all the way up to over $3,200. And those numbers absolutely dwarf the rest of the college football playoff games over the first two rounds. The next closest game being Oregon versus Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. Most expensive ticket there sitting at $2,400, but $3,200 looking like the most expensive so far for the rematch between Ole Miss and Georgia. It is going to be a fun one, and it's going to be a packed house down in New Orleans for that one on New Year's. All right, a few other pieces here on some latest transfer portal intel, according to On3. Transfer portal open in 3 days. Some of the quarterbacks grabbing a lot of attention. And Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt, the latest they have on him is the early schools that were tied to him included Oregon and LSU. And he is expected to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the portal, commanding anywhere from $3 to $5 million. So Sam Leavitt, like we said, Oregon and LSU seem to be the two teams very high on his list. How about DJ Lagway from Florida? Among the schools being mentioned for him are Baylor, Louisville, and LSU. So you got to wonder, is Lane Kiffin going to land one of these guys, Sam Leavitt or DJ Lagway, especially if the Trinidad Chambliss news, he does not get that extra year of eligibility. And, or, if he does and winds it back at Ole Miss, Kiffin's got to look elsewhere. A few other names just to keep an eye on. North Texas running back Caleb Hawkins. Texas, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State all reportedly interested in him. Of course, we know Jaden Baugh has not gone into the portal yet at Florida, but a lot of rumblings that Texas is trying to do everything they can to try to get Jaden Baugh over to Austin. Let's see, a few other notes. LSU offensive lineman Carius Curran, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Kentucky, and Georgia all remain the top schools. So sounds like Carius Curran going to stay in the SEC and could end up at one of those schools. USC defensive lineman Devin Tompkins, Alabama, Oregon, and Georgia seem to be the three schools to keep an eye on for him at this point. And then Georgia Tech quarterback Aaron Philo, Florida remains the school of note for him. So again, going to keep an eye on that. We should get some clarity, I think, in the first few days of the portal being open with some of those guys who may have already made a decision through their agents saying, all right, here's where I'm going to go. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Hey guys, Fridays always feel different throughout the basketball season. FanDuel, they are making them even better. Every Friday night before a game tips off, FanDuel gives the fans a new way to kick off the weekend with their NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with the NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. Always going to bring something new, from boosts to bonuses to surprises. It is easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing's perfect. It's right before the games, right before the weekend starts, and it adds that extra boost to energy to Friday night basketball without having to overthink it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app, see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. That's every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, a whole lot of Friday energy. That is NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, thank you guys for checking us out here on Locked On SEC. Before we go today, figured we'd bring you a little bit more on the Cam Coleman saga. Our guy, Zac Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn, giving his firsthand reaction to the news and how this affects Auburn and the potential of Cam Coleman going to another school in the SEC and having to face Auburn and how much that would suck. Here was our guy, Zac Blackerby, giving his reaction.
I mean, Cam Coleman will be one of, if not the best player that enters the transfer portal. He was one of the best receivers in college football last year, despite production. I mean, his production was almost in spite of what Hugh Freeze's offense was. And the excitement around Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton and the possibility of bringing these guys back in this Alex Golesh system was enticing. And that was one of the things that was kind of hopeful, I guess. And then it's coupled with every source close to Auburn, Tom Lloyd, national writer, yesterday saying, hey, yes, everything close. Like, all these sources are saying that Auburn feels good about retaining Cam Coleman. And clearly that's not That's not what's happening based on On3's reports earlier today. So pretty crazy stuff. Pretty crazy stuff. So, I mean, there's so many different ways we can go with this. Let's start with on-field impact. And I want to be very clear. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, like, I'm getting texts like, walk us off the cliff. I'll do that to some extent. And so, like, with me saying some of the, like, potential upside of him leaving, I want to be very clear. I think Auburn should have paid whatever it took to keep Cam Coleman. So this isn't a coping thing, right? I don't think this is good. I don't. But when you think about like what Golesh has done, he's been able to do it without elite receivers. Even when he had at Tennessee, he had Jalen Hyatt, who was productive, but was he elite? I mean, he hasn't been elite at the NFL level by any stretch of the imagination. Could that have been where he went? Possibly. Sure. And so that was what was so exciting is, okay, he hasn't had a tandem like Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. Just put two guys out wide and let them work. The thing that's most frustrating to me about this is one of the first things that Alex Golesh said publicly at his introductory presser is the roster, the guys currently on the roster are the priority. And I'm all for doing what it takes culturally to do something about, flipping the roster or getting guys that are all on the same page and the guys that want to be here and all of that. But, wanting to be somewhere is a two-way street. And do I think Auburn should overpay for all of these players and all these reports that are coming out? No, I don't. But going into the portal, I said there were two guys, and then folks who came on here, disagree with me and said maybe it's three or four. And I can see them and like, yeah, okay, if you want to put Xavier Atkins as a guy who's not replaceable in the portal, I'm fine with it. And Auburn took care of Xavier Atkins. Clearly, they made a big deal about him returning, which is great. Huge win. Really the biggest retention win so far. And we kind of thought Cam Coleman and then Deuce Knight was coming soon behind it. And I did anticipate and guess that we would get a Cam Coleman announcement before Friday. I did, however, think the announcement would be that he's staying. And so that's certainly unfortunate. Certainly unfortunate. And so with Golesh talking about the roster retention and the current guys on the roster being the priority is I don't know. It doesn't feel that way. And I feel like we think about this differently if he just doesn't say it at all. If he just said, hey, yeah, we're going to have a close look at the guys here. We're going to figure out who wants to be here. We're going to figure out, who fits our system, and we'll go from there. If he says that, I think we do feel different about some of this. But if roster retention and the guys currently on the roster is the goal, then like what are we doing? What are we doing? Now the other side of this is, we're talking like the numbers that I heard being thrown towards Cam Coleman were like, multiple million. And, that $30 million mark is kind of where we're at. Do you give 10% of your payroll, maybe more, maybe a little less, but let's say it's around 3 million. I heard 2 million, I heard 3 million, I had 4 million. And I think a lot of it was incentive based. Do you throw that much at a receiver? It's a reasonable question. It's a reasonable question. You see NFL teams do it, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. I think it was worth it from an off the field point of view, but I don't want to be a hypocrite because I've said I don't think this staff cares about off-field victories unless it can help you win games. And so the whole public perception thing and perception is reality. Like I do think that's important. But I think this staff is going to view that differently than the previous staff did. But I mean, just from somebody who cares about Auburn and cares about all of the folks that consume this show every day, this stinks. I mean, the amount of texts I'm getting of people that are just like upset. It stinks. It stinks. And I don't think there's any way really around that aspect of it. It looks awful. Like whether it actually is or not, it is awful. I mean, the amount of money Auburn's about to have to pay guys in the portal is going to be tremendous. But if you're trying to get market value or under market for all of these guys, I just wonder, like, what does that process look like? You can certainly make the argument that a receiver is not worth that much money, but I just think it's larger than that. I think it's larger than all of that. So, where he goes is going to be fascinating. Where he goes is going to be, I mean, it sounds like it's been other SEC schools that have pursued him. I've heard A&M, I've heard Florida, I've heard Georgia. With them hiring Nix at Bama, like, is that an option? Goodness gracious.
All right, that again, Zac Blackerby from Locked On Auburn. Thank you guys for tuning into today to Locked On SEC. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On SEC so you get all of our latest episodes. And hey, if Locked On SEC made your Spotify wrapped, you could prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. You just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform. We'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow with reaction from Ole Miss and Georgia at their media day, getting ready for the Sugar Bowl.